In the outskirts of the city, there stood an old asylum called Shadow Haven. For years, no one had heard much about it, and those who remembered it spoke in whispers, as if afraid the very walls of the place could hear them. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, its gates rusted shut, and its windows shattered and dark. Locals believed it was cursed, a place where time itself had stopped, and madness lingered in the very air like a thick fog. Legends told of strange occurrences within its walls. It was said that the patients there had vanished overnight, without a trace, and that the doctors and staff who ran the place were never seen again. Some believed that they had been consumed by their own experiments, driven insane by the horrors they had inflicted on the inmates. Others whispered that the asylum had become a doorway to something far worse, a place where the lines between reality and nightmare blurred. One cold autumn evening, a group of college students, drawn by curiosity and the thrill of exploring the unknown, decided to break into Shadow Haven. They had heard the stories but dismissed them as urban legends. Armed with flashlights and cameras, they cut through the chain-link fence and ventured inside, laughing nervously as the eerie silence of the place wrapped around them. The moment they stepped into the main building, something felt wrong. The air was heavy, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Their breath fogged in the cold as they moved deeper into the asylum. The halls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the floor creaked ominously beneath their feet. As they explored, they found old medical equipment, rusted and decayed, scattered about, and faded patient files strewn across the floor. But there were no signs of life, no evidence that anyone had been there for years. Then the strange noises began. At first, it was just a soft whispering, like distant voices echoing through the empty halls. The students joked that it was just the wind, but soon the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to be calling out names none of them recognized. And then came the footsteps, slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was walking just behind them. One of the students, a girl named Emily, was the first to notice the shadows. They moved in ways that didn't make sense, stretching and shifting along the walls in ways that defied the light from their flashlights. At first, she thought it was a trick of her mind, but when she pointed it out, the others saw it too. The shadows weren't just shifting, they were following them. Panic set in, and they decided to leave, but the asylum wasn't about to let them go so easily. The doors they had entered through were now locked, though none of them had touched them. The windows, too, seemed sealed shut by some unseen force. Desperation took over as they tried to find another way out, but every hallway they turned down seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the asylum, as if the building itself were alive, twisting its corridors to trap them. Suddenly, they heard a scream, a piercing, blood-curdling scream that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It echoed through the halls, sending chills down their spines. When they followed the sound, they found themselves in the asylum's main ward. The room was filled with old, rusty hospital beds, each one covered in a thin layer of dust. But in the middle of the room stood a single bed that looked untouched by time, its white sheets pristine. Lying on the bed was a patient, their face obscured by bandages. A faint breathing sound came from the figure as if they were still alive. But when one of the students, Daniel, approached the bed and pulled back the bandages, the figure vanished, disappearing into thin air, leaving only the impression of a body on the sheets. Before they could react, the lights in the room flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The whispers returned, louder than before, now accompanied by the sound of scratching, like nails on a chalkboard. Something was in the room with them, something that didn't belong in this world. One by one, the students disappeared, pulled into the shadows as if they were being swallowed by the darkness itself. Their screams echoed through the halls, but there was no one left to hear them. By morning, the asylum was silent once again, as if nothing had ever happened. Days later, when a search party was sent to find the missing students, all they found were their abandoned flashlights and cameras. The footage on the cameras revealed nothing but static except for the last few seconds, where a single phrase could be heard, whispered over and over again. "Welcome to Shadow Haven." No one ever entered the asylum again. But at night, if you stand close enough to the gates, you might hear the whispers of those who never escaped, forever trapped in the madness of Shadow Haven.